It's always challenging to photograph a bride or a groom who's wearing glasses, but the photographer's done very well to actually tilt the glasses downwards not to get the reflection off the window. I love the bride's expression and the way she's turning her face towards a light source. She's a little bit too front on to the camera. It would have been great if you turned her body away from the light source. This would have added a little bit more depth and dimension to her figure and texture in her dress. Also bringing her shoulders back and also allowing a bit more breathing space between her arms and her body would have gotten rid of those little pinches of skin that happen over the dress. I quite enjoyed the photographer's vision here. Using a shallow depth of field and photographing through a doorway and a curtain sort of offers that little voyeuristic feel. If you're going to take on the view of a voyeur, I don't really feel that the bride should be looking at the camera. It should be more about a moment or a mood or a feeling. Now, the photographers use a different light source to illuminate the bride, but the pretty light is actually hitting her arm and not really her face, also causing quite a distracting reflection on her glasses. A general rule that I abide by is once I crop below the elbow, I feature the whole arm and the whole hand. Here she looks just a little bit too passive, and cropping just before her fingers just looks like a mistake rather it was done on purpose. I like the shallow depth of field here, although I would have liked it even more shallower. Perhaps a tighter crop and also the guys being a little bit closer to the groom would have made this shot a lot more stronger. I think that the photographer was actually trying to use those leaves in the top left-hand corner to frame this particular shot. I just don't think it works though. It's actually more distracting than a graphic element that supports this image. The fact that the groom is actually leaning backwards, it actually gives him a little bit of a double chin. I would have liked him to actually lean forward with his chin up, and that would have complemented him so much better. The leaves in this shot on the left-hand side seem to suit this image a whole lot more, although a lower camera angle would have helped frame the couple so much more with these leaves. It's kind of like vignetting, but just using elements around us for that effect. The negative space is quite nice too. The nice light is actually coming from the right-hand side. It would have been good for the photographer to actually position themselves on the right-hand side with the couple doing the exact same thing but turning to the left. The groom's embrace is pressing the bride's arm against her body. If the bride actually placed her arm over the groom's arm, it would have allowed for more breathing space and a slender figure. The last thing that I try to achieve with every single image is emotion or expression. I believe the expression from the groom, but the bride seems to be almost stunned, almost like a deer in the headlights. Let's just watch that. This could have been very powerful, but a bit more intimacy or something happening between them would have been a whole lot better. It's always fun shooting against the wall with a shallow depth of field, which leads your eye in to the subject. I like the bride's expression, but I'm just looking at her feet. And although there's a little bit of finesse there, I would have loved to have seen the bride lift her leg and place her heel on the actual door to get her knee crossing over her right leg. It would have just been that little bit sexier. I don't really want to critique this image. This is a good example where emotion beats perfection. This moment looks a little bit forced. I don't mind the positioning of the hands in this shot, but their pose and their feet just seem a little bit too deliberate. There's not enough movement in their legs. I find usually the best angle for a kissing shot is slightly over the groom's shoulder with the bride on the outside, just so you can see the kiss. And if you were setting up a shot that something looked great in it, let's say the kiss and the hands and the upper bodies looked great, but the legs didn't, and you couldn't quite figure it out, I suggest a couple of things. If you don't like something in a shot, you hide it. If you can't hide it, crop it. If you can't crop it, then don't shoot it. Here we could have cropped it, gone a little bit closer, and perhaps would have made this shot a little bit more powerful. It's important that when you're working with really harsh sunlight, that you not only look for the highlights, but you look at what the shadows are doing. Here we see the groomsman on the left-hand side causing a shadow on the actual groom's shirt, and then therefore you're seeing a shadow of the groom's face on the groom's jacket. It's a little bit awkward and a little bit messy. The tight crop on the truck actually eliminates any distraction that you could possibly want to avoid. I really like the idea behind this shot and where the photographer has placed the couple. The bride's face and the camera angle seem to disguise the beautiful emotion that's happening between the bride and the groom. The bride's right hand seems very forced on the red wall, and the groom's hand just seems very lazily just hanging by his side, although he seems to be enjoying what he's doing with the right hand. As you can see also, the bride is actually pushing her hip one way, but she's pushing it the wrong way. She's pushing it towards the light source, which makes that area look bigger than it actually is. It feels like that this image was meant to be a stylized, fashionable image of the bride. Having the bride actually sit on stairs rather than walk up them gives me that feeling. It feels like that we should have something a little bit more finessed. A bit more finesse could have been added here if perhaps the bride just leant back a little bit, had her chin up and rested the back of her head on the stairwell there, and also cross the ankle, the right ankle, underneath the left ankle, or stretch one of the legs out. Once you've stylized that pose a little bit more perfectly, what breaks that perfection, which makes it look more believable, could be that reaction, that final emotion that just gives that image that little bit of spunk. To the photographer, thank you so much for allowing me to critique your work. I encourage you to keep on searching for the best light and choosing poses that amplifies the strengths of your couple and hides their weaknesses. Well done. Thank you so much.